When it comes to horror, there are so many different avenues you can go down. There are some big budget things that have splurts of blood and people dying all over the place, but if you dig into the mud a little bit, you will find some gems that have been lost and truly can scare you to your core. Today, we're gonna dig up some of these gems, and we're gonna look at which ones might be the best. I'm your host, Che Durena, and we have all of this on today's top 5 scary list. Coming at number 5, we have Freaks, a classic horror movie that many of the modern horror movie lovers will have no idea about. Let's put it this way, if this movie was made today, it would not only be extremely hard to watch, but it would be one of the most controversial films of our time. Freaks is about a trapeze performer who comes up with a scheme to walk away with millions of dollars. She ends up getting in with the sideshow performers at the circus and learns that one of the dwarfs, who is married, is secretly rich and has a stockpile of money waiting for him after his parents die. She uses her beauty to get in close with him, and eventually he turns on his wife and falls in love with this con artist. But when the plan is revealed and the dwarf learns that he's been tricked, well, our lovely trapeze artist is in for a horrible punishment that is one of the peak moments in horror movies. Now, this movie was made in 1932, and most of the people in the film are real sideshow workers and have severe disabilities. Even back in 1932, the movie was criticized for taking advantage of people with disabilities for the benefit of the movie. So if people felt like that almost 100 years ago, then you can only imagine how the movie would have an effect on people now. The film was actually banned in a few countries because they found it too hard for audiences to watch, and governments thought it was too disturbing and shouldn't be seen as entertainment. And just so we're clear, the vision that was made in theaters was much less graphic than the original. The original film was actually shown to focus groups, and they couldn't make it through the movie, so it was edited down to be more palatable. I actually have seen this movie. I got a box set of horror movies and I had no idea what it was when I started watching it. There are a couple moments in that movie that still stick in my head, and it's been about 10 years since I've seen it, just so you have an idea of how jarring some of the imagery in that movie can be. Coming at number 4, we have It's Alive. When birth control in the 70s was a new thing on the market, people were very afraid of what the effects could be, and they should have been, because it turns out that many of them were harmful. But It's Alive takes this fear and runs with it in one of the strangest ways possible. A woman who was on a pharmaceutical contraceptive somehow gets pregnant, and the baby that is born turns out to be some sort of hideous monstrosity that just can't be killed. Even though it should have been killed the second it was out of the womb, it slithers away like the xenomorph from Alien, and then people are on the hunt to take it out. 3 groups of people are chasing this thing down, one of them being the baby's father, who I can only assume feels some sort of responsibility for the creature that is now loose and terrorizing the world, another being the pharmaceutical company who made the birth control. I mean, they want to get out there and cover this up before the news gets word that their pill will cause women to give birth to killer mutant babies that have an endless lust for blood. The CEO of that company was probably freaking out because he doesn't want the stock price of his company to go into the toilet. That would be bad for the look of the company. And the last group that is chasing down this rugrat from hell would be the police. They are just trying to do their job. In the end, the police kill the youngest killer in the world, and right when the viewers think it's time to kick back and feel a wave of relief wash over their body, the police get a call that another baby like this was born in Seattle. Whoa! Honestly, a pretty solid way to end a horror movie. Coming at number 3, we have Possum. Now for our next point, we're going to jump across the pond and look at one of the most bizarre horror movies in recent years. No, not every movie on this list is going to be something that was made decades ago. Possum is a British movie that is directed by famed comedy writer Matthew Holness. And if Get Out has taught us anything, it's that comedy writers have a pretty good understanding of how to make a good horror movie. My theory is that both comedy and horror use the same basic principles. They are both about creating and releasing tension. Well, in the movie Possum, there is a whole lot of tension. The movie is about a puppeteer who has lost his job and takes this opportunity to go back to his hometown and try and deal with his trauma. And the whole movie centers around that, which is trauma. I won't get into too much detail as to what happened to this puppeteer, but just know that this is a very dark dark, disturbing horror movie with imagery that will make you look away from the screen, and the trauma comes from his childhood and events that happened between him and his uncle. Now, probably the most unsettling creature in this whole thing is what would be seen as some sort of movie monster, but is only visible to the main character. In an attempt to break free from his trauma, the puppeteer has forced his traumatic experiences into a psychological puppet that comes to life in his mind. This thing looks like it has the face of the Nun and a body of a spider. Throughout the movie, you learn that this creature will haunt him forever, and the final message seems to be that you can never escape your trauma, but you can learn to live with it. The movie leaves you with a lot of unanswered questions, which is good for horror. You want to feel leaving a little bit uneasy. By the end of the movie, you'll be confused, scared, and worried that some thoughts from your past will manifest into a being that will haunt you until you're in a hole in the ground. Or I guess you could just try to bury them all and ignore your inside problems like most people do. Coming in at number 2, we have Possession. One of the weirdest horror movies that you will ever come across, but the whole thing is a wild ride that I recommend people jump onto. The Possession, at its core, is about two people going through a divorce, and let me just tell you that the movie is very different from Marriage Story. For one, there are no memes about it. Well, the movie follows a man and woman as they split up, and the whole experience is devastating for the two of them. There are several scenes in the movie where the female lead, Isabelle Ingani, is expressing herself in the most over-the-top dramatic way you could imagine. Her counterpart, Sam Neill, is trying to quell these outcries in a way to control her and keep her for himself. That's partly why the movie is called Possession. The other reason that the movie is called Possession is because there's a whole lot of God talk throughout the movie, and some sort of demonic monstrosity covered in blood that is creepy enough to make you want to sleep with the lights on. The whole movie is shot and acted like a dramatic Greek play. You have swooping camera zoom-ins that take too long, and breakdowns that take way too long. From a classic horror perspective, the movie might be a little too strange for you. If you're looking for a horror movie that's just going to walk you down a road to a creepy monster and have a couple of lustful 20-somethings killed in a car because they got a little too handsy, well then this is not going to be the movie for you. But if you're craving something a little bit more bizarre and something that can be considered a very art-housey movie, and you like it when bloody monsters kill things, then you should jump into this one because it's one hell of a ride. And coming into the number 1 spot, we have Creep. Creep is probably the movie that makes people at home terrified because it builds a villain that is so believable. It will have you locking your doors and windows and never accepting an invitation to someone's cottage again. Now, even though this one is more popular than some of the other movies on this list, it's still a hidden gem for most people. I think deep horror fans have all seen this movie, but if you have a friend who is just starting to get into the genre, then you are going to want to get them into this movie quickly. I put this movie so high on the list because I love found footage horror. It's one of my favorite types. I think it's because the movie feels so real, and part of what makes the slowly unveiling psycho so menacing are the awkward moments that you're forced to watch. And because the movie is about a filmmaker who is asked to go to a cabin in the woods with a stranger so he can film his will and the end of his life, our spooky cabin owner is apparently dying, those awkward moments become frightening because you have to be stuck with the person alone. What would it be like to be captured with someone who's extremely weird and they do something you would normally just walk away from, but now you have to stay and look at them in the face for who knows how long. Alright guys, that has been our list. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I have been your host, Chaderena, and we'll catch you on the next one. Did I say number 10 at the beginning?
I don't think so, but we do.
Okay, just in case. Coming in at number 5, we have Freaks. I mean, they want to get out there and cover this stuff up before the nude. I mean, they want to get out there and cover this up before the. Possum is a British movie that is. Sorry. Yeah, in this whole.